Nickisnotgreen just hit a new low, but is he about to redeem himself? Probably not, but let's go into why. Nick Green has been facing controversy for several months due to his handling of the SuperMega controversy that stemmed from an alleged victim of SA airing their grievances with how Matt and Ryan, aka SuperMega, handled her being assaulted by their employee. And as Nick was friends with this victim, he ended up making 4 videos about the situation to support his friend. In response to this coverage, criticisms were aimed at Nick for spreading false rumors.
And not only did that, but cheated on the girl that he cheated on his girlfriend with a worker by the name of Morgue Pie.
Repeating the false accusation that SuperMega covered up an assault, outright lying in support of his goals, and even weaponizing SuperMega's close friend taking their own life.
Daniel was the 3rd member of this YouTube channel, and he ended up taking his life a number of years ago. And despite the fact that this seemed to be a big turning point in Matt and Ryan's career, and it seems to be something that affected them even to this day, Lex and, as we'll learn in the future, other former employees of SuperMega have claimed that Matt had made a lot of jokes about what happened to Daniel, and even called him a coward at some point for what he did.
And 2 weeks ago, a video essay was released by a creator whose name nobody spells correctly. I'm not bitter. But this video demonstrated how Nick's unethical behavior goes far beyond this one controversy and extended to things like bullying and performative allyship. Now, it's been 2 weeks since that video's release, and a lot has happened, so let's get into it. For starters, Nick has lost 30,000 subscribers over the last 2 weeks. And I know it sounds arrogant to believe my video had anything to do with that, but I actually have good reason to believe it did. For starters, the video has over 500,000 views, which compared to his 800,000 subscribers is a pretty significant ratio. But even more, his loss in subscribers had slowed to him only losing a few hundred per day until the day of my video's release. Since then, he's been losing thousands a day, even as the views on my video have slowed down a bit. So while I don't think every one of those people saw my video, it looks like the conversation about Nick's conduct was reignited, and the scope of that conversation was brought in to beyond the SuperMega controversy. So what has Nick's reaction been? Well, the first major change was that his subreddit was set to private, effectively shutting it down. See, in the months leading up to this, the subreddit had effectively turned on Nick, and while he tried to claim that this was due to bad faith actors from the outside, the criticism was often very specific, clearly coming from people very familiar with Nick's content. And in response to the subreddit being shut down, all that was said was a message from the moderator that reads, "This sub is locked now. I want to delete it, but can't since only Nick can, and he deleted his account." Honestly, there's no actual conversation going on. Maybe in the beginning, yes, but everything that's being posted is just snark, and I'm not going to defend Nick because he up and has been f***ing up. I'm no longer a fan, that's why I privated the sub and left since I can't remove myself as mod. Everyone that wants to make posts can make their own sub. So apparently Nick had nothing to do with this, but it's still kinda weird. Because contrary to the mod's claims, Nick's Reddit account does still exist. And the subreddit was very actively having discussions, largely about my video. And that subreddit was basically the most thorough archive for learning about Nick's controversies. But now, all of that information is just gone. So while I do believe he didn't personally delete the subreddit, it's still not a great look, especially since Nick has previously criticized others for deleting apologies or critical comments.
He deleted the apology tweet. He already deleted it. Insane. Insane. What a piece of shit.
And now both Nick's apology video and all of the critical comments of the subreddit have been deleted, so that's just not a great look. And overall, it seems like Nick is just in full damage control mode in an effort to put this whole situation behind him. Because with the whole SuperMega controversy, this is the first time to my knowledge that Nick's audience has turned on him rather than him just facing criticism from outsiders. Now for some background, Nick made his original 2 videos on SuperMega and was criticized for the reasons I've mentioned. He then doubled down a ton in response to the backlash.
Of course, I'm gonna take the side of a personal friend of mine when she comes out with a story about her own sexual assault. This isn't like an online, like normal thing where I look at all the facts and I make a decision. No.
But when Ryan of SuperMega broke his silence to express hurt at how his best friend's suicide was used as a weapon against him, Nick finally started facing backlash from his viewers. So after initially trying to double down again, Nick eventually made a very snarky apology where he became very defensive.
So much of the criticism I've received from making these videos has been from people who never took the time to watch any of the videos I made about the situation, and it becomes increasingly more obvious that they took the word of people deflecting from the truth rather than actually watching all of the videos involved. You cannot watch a video from another creator or even from Matt and Ryan claiming that I am a liar without even watching the content that I made in the first place. That is the definition of attacking someone in bad faith.
Even going so far as to make the bizarre claim that SuperMega admitted to covering up an assault.
I have seen creators who have firsthand experienced the backlash of telling a story as a victim online who are now backing up SuperMega as if they both didn't fully admit to covering up their friend and employee assaulting another one of their friends,
despite that being an outright lie since they explicitly denied this.
I also want to state that we never took any action to cover up assault, and we never tried to cover Dawn from any consequences. For example, I was the one who told Ross over the phone because Ross had a show with Dawn and I felt like he needed to know this.
And after some tiptoeing, we ended up cutting ties with Dawn, both personally and professionally. We cut all contact with him. We also updated those who we knew that were working with him of the situation.
He also threw his friends, the SA victim and her boyfriend / his best friend, under the bus and distanced himself from them in an effort to save face.
But I just want to make it clear that Daniel should not have been mentioned in anyone's videos about the situation, including Lex. But again, our social media accounts are not controlled the same way. I am not in consistent communication with her, and I am not associated with how she goes about telling her story.
As you can imagine, this caused Nick to get a ton of backlash, at which point he deleted this so-called apology and released a much more appropriate one, although it was buried in an unrelated video. And most recently, he released an apology on his community tab on YouTube. So if you're keeping track, this is now Nick's third apology, and I'm sorry, but this really doesn't seem like the kind of thing that should take 3 tries. But in terms of what Nick's statement does address, the apology is pretty good in my opinion. The problem is that there is a lot that Nick doesn't do that I think is important to address, but I'll read an excerpt to kind of give you an idea of what was done well. Given the seriousness of these topics, I should have taken much more care with the titles, the content, and even the way I edited these videos. I regret the eagerness I had to insult Matt and Ryan in the story in ways that were unnecessary and careless, and for including details about them that were unrelated to Lex's assault. Regardless of whether or not these details were talked about in Lex's video, I should have been much more careful about the way I presented them, and I am sorry for that. Now that's pretty good. It owns up to a lot of what made his involvement in this situation so destructive. So what's my problem? Well, Nick only really apologizes to his audience despite his wrongdoings going far beyond that. For example, Nick doesn't apologize to Matt or Ryan. Now he does say he regrets insulting them and bringing up unrelated stuff, but he doesn't actually apologize to them. Like, it's a very detached statement that reads as him wearing his influencer hat, but there were also real people personally hurt by his actions. Honestly, it would have been nice to see him treat them as people for the first time. It just seems to me like Nick's distaste for Matt and Ryan has turned this into a pride thing, which is very understandable and very human, but still disappointing. Also, he doesn't apologize to Lex, the alleged victim of assault. Like, Nick completely threw her under the bus in a way that honestly was kind of gross. For starters, Lex and her boyfriend Ethan had asked Nick to make his original videos on SuperMega. Now already, it's wildly unethical that Nick didn't disclose that in his original coverage.
And when Lex was preparing her story, I was given permission by her to cover it. It was never something that I suggested to Lex, but when she mentioned it, I decided to share her story.
But Nick finally revealing this wasn't done for transparency, but to shift the blame. Why else would Nick think that the peak of the backlash, once it's finally affecting him, is the time to disclose this?
Lex posted her story, and I was asked by her and Ethan to potentially talk about it on my channel because I've talked about similar situations in the past, and I should not have agreed to cover it when Ethan and Lex approached me with the idea.
Like, as someone who preaches transparency, Nick should not have revealed that when he did. That ship had already sailed, so him only coming clean as a last resort was cold. I can't imagine how much worse that made things for Lex, who, yes, messed up, but she isn't a content creator on the level of Nick, meaning he made the backlash against her far greater than it otherwise would have been, and she's reliving what she describes as a traumatic event. Nick also said in his apology that the harm he did with his platform should be blamed on Lex.
Daniel should not have been mentioned in anyone's videos about the situation, including Lex. Because it was a part of multiple stories that I was summarizing in my video, I of course decided to include it as valuable information. After reporting on this story in both of my videos, I will say that I believe Daniel's suicide should not have been a part of the story told by Lex and Layden. I do not think it was necessary information for anyone to include that in their personal story about SuperMega. I do not believe that means that I should ignore and disregard any mention of Daniel in my story, so I included it. And I can firmly say that I had no part or decision in Daniel becoming a part of Lex or Layden's story.
Like, I get they're not friends anymore, which I'll get to, but Nick did Lex straight up dirty, at least publicly, so he should have apologized for that. Also, this isn't a video response, which his comments are widely criticizing him for. Though, to give the benefit of the doubt, I wouldn't say it's because he was trying to hide this statement, because he did unprivate his Twitter to release it, and he posted it on his Instagram story, so that's something. But Nick has also criticized people for deleting apology videos the way he did, so I don't even know what he's thinking anymore. But also, this apology falls into patterns of Nick's that I've specifically called out already. For starters, it's kind of vague. If you didn't know the details of this controversy, I don't think this explains it much at all. And it was released when he started losing thousands of subscribers a day again. Like, I can't say that's all he cares about, but this is now the third time in a row that his apology isn't released during a period of things being calm, but instead when things are falling apart for him. But also, this apology feels like it has a hidden agenda that's kind of shady. Now, I'm entering the realm of speculation, but let me explain what I mean. There were already conversations about Nick's mishandling of the SuperMega situation thanks to creators like Turkey Tom and Gokanaru. But seemingly because of my video, the conversation has widened in scope to talking about Nick's overall ethics as a creator beyond just SuperMega, such as Nick punching down, ridiculing a woman crying in response to SA threats, and outright lying during his coverage of other situations. Yet none of that is addressed at all. Now, I'm going to sound arrogant for a minute, but it feels like Nick panicked and arrived at the conclusion that he's better off swallowing his pride and putting the SuperMega situation to rest by any means necessary. Because the longer people are talking about this, the more likely his remaining viewers will find out about his problematic behavior beyond just this. Like, it's better to have people know about this one mess up than a documented history. Again, that's speculation, and I'm obviously very biased, but you gotta admit it's reasonable for me to be a little skeptical given the timing of all this, right? But remember Nick's friend, the one who Nick was trying to support and thus kicked off this whole controversy? Remember how I allude to them not being friends anymore? Yeah, it turns out a lot has happened behind the scenes. For starters, her and her boyfriend have unfollowed Nick, and they've removed any public acknowledgements of each other, such as being a featured YouTube channel. She's also taken to liking quite a few tweets that are pretty harshly criticizing Nick, such as saying that Nick is reaping what he sows, or about how Nick's only apologizing because of backlash as opposed to genuine reflection. Hell, Lex even liked a tweet about how she's liking tweets, but perhaps the most scathing one says, "You keep saying reporting like you're a newscaster or something. You let your emotions take control and ranted, mostly about things not even relevant to the essay. You used your friend's essay allegations for personal gain." Which, wow, Lex is pissed. But here's the thing, I kinda get why she would be. Like, again, Nick threw Lex and Ethan under the bus a lot during his initial apologies, but no matter how much you want to look at it, it seems like things got really ugly behind the scenes. I will say, it's a little weird that she's liking tweets critical of his original videos since her and her boyfriend had initially praised them.
Why are they being canceled? Because they covered up sexual assault. That is why. Nick did a great video about it. What happened with SuperMega? Listen, Nick made a video about it, but all you need to know is that they're bad.
But also, Lex and Ethan have both broken their silence about the situation with SuperMega and especially about Nick. In Lex's case, this has included making several comments on YouTube, but Ethan was a little less restrained. He recently made dozens of tweets about the situation while cursing out and insulting various people negatively engaging with him. This also included him telling a creator with whom Ethan has an ongoing feud to "take my dick out of your mouth," which maybe that wasn't the best choice of words since that was exactly what Lex described happened during her recollection of the assault, though Ethan also stated that he and Nick are now on poor terms. But with all this, Lex and Ethan are also contradicting each other. See, Lex has now stated that all of Nick's coverage of her story was bad and destructive, including the original video that she and Ethan originally praised. Yet Ethan stated that Nick shouldn't have deleted his videos that were supporting Lex, which would imply the opposite. Like, this whole thing is just a mess, though many are saying that they deserve this. But at the same time, man, Nick is such a larger creator than Lex or Ethan. Like, I get the take that they approached and asked Nick to get involved and thus can only blame themselves, but Nick really should have known better. Like, it's ironic for Nick to be the first to say that others are undeserving of their platforms.
If you have too much going on and you can't take care of that, you need to hire someone who can, or else you don't deserve your business. You don't know how to handle it. And has agreed that his actions are not worthy of the platform he has. They're just really, really dumb, and they don't really deserve to have the company and the team and the platform that they have with the way that they've handled it.
Yet when things get real, he blames his actions on the two people with much smaller followings and less experience than him. I don't know. But either way, it's becoming increasingly obvious that Nick is ultimately walking away from this controversy having gained nothing. And Lex has been stated to be working on an update video, so I cannot imagine how harsh that's going to end up being towards Nick, but we'll see. Though on the other side, Nick's girlfriend is liking tweets aimed at calling Lex out for betraying Nick, including calling Lex's behavior manic and saying that Lex and Ethan stabbed him in the back. So, yeah, that's fun. But again, I get why she'd be pissed. Nick is facing the risk of losing everything, at the very least his reputation, and from her perspective, I get why it'd suck to see her boyfriend dragged for trying to do the right thing. I don't know, weirdly, I kind of feel bad for everyone in this mess. Like, it's just a really sad example of how this job kind of forces everyone to focus on self-preservation at the end of the day. And this whole experience feels like a learning opportunity where it's best to sever ties and learn from it, but now there's a bunch of people with careers on the line, so it's not that simple. Like, I honestly just feel bad for these people. But that's kind of where we are now, so where do we go from here? How are things looking for Nick? In my opinion, it's hard to tell. The main thing we have so far is that Nick has released his first video back, and while the views are a bit lower for him, the reception hasn't been bad. And I watched the video and overall have some thoughts I want to quickly share on how Nick might actually be responding to the feedback from myself and others, even if he won't admit to that directly. Now, the first thing that stood out to me was the length, because the video was 45 minutes long, around double what his videos usually run, which set off some red flags since Nick isn't exactly the best when it comes to research, and November and December is when YouTubers are paid by far the most, so him being unable to post until now and coming back with a longer video that allows for more mid-roll ads wasn't a great sign. But honestly, the video wasn't too bad. It was on comedian Matt Rife's recent controversy and seemed relatively well researched. At the very least, I've been loosely following the situation and can't name anything that Nick got obviously wrong. And while I said I don't like when his content is performative or mean-spirited and him trying to dunk on a comedian for making arguably misogynistic jokes is kinda not doing much to change that, it's also the audience he's grown, and I do think he believes in what he preaches, he just doesn't hold to those virtues when it gets hard for him. So whatever, the topic makes sense for him. Though yeah, the video is still pretty mean-spirited. It doesn't really act as a constructive bit of commentary, but rather, everyone else hates this guy, so I'm gonna make fun of him too.
The first thing I'll say is that I think if you have a group of friends who are interested in a good Netflix hate watch, this is definitely a top pick for me. I practically rolled my eyes around my head just dozens and dozens of times while watching maybe the most unlikable guy. That's it. He's just the most unlikable guy.
And like, Nick even calls himself a better comedian than Matt.
I really do hope that Matt gets offended from this video though, just so I am proven to be the better comedian.
In which case, it could have been fun to see Nick rewrite some of Matt's jokes to show how offensive humor can be made to land, but making fun of him works too, I guess. So something that I think is funny is that Nick gets pretty upset that Matt Rife makes a bunch of fat jokes and vocalizes his dislike of body shaming.
Matt will make sure that you know he's not trying to disrespect this person for being fat. Seriously, no disrespect. No disrespect. But then he continues to make joke after joke after joke about their weight. And the joke is just that they're fat. And this seems to be Matt's default when it comes to making a joke about the situation. It's just funny because they're fat. That's good. I'm surprised no one's come up with that one yet. A slew of unfunny half-baked jokes that take shots at people who are less successful, less good-looking, and less manly than himself. Basically, he just keeps making fat jokes over and over again. That's funny.
Which, yeah, lazy jokes about one's appearance kind of always suck, but Nick goes on to make fun of Matt Rife's appearance.
And that's when I think the facade of who Matt is really fades, because he allows people to see what is underneath the skin of this Frankenstein-looking ghoul.
And he previously made fun of the appearance of Jim from SuperMega.
Can I put a photo of him up on the screen? It's literally what he looks like.
Once again, I just don't love this idea of his that certain rules of common decency don't apply to people you don't like. I get that I'm boring, but that's kind of lame to me. And at one point, Nick gives this little monologue that I guess is supposed to come off as this really poignant deconstruction of Matt Rife. Yet all I can think during this is how Nick somehow doesn't realize that he is literally just repeating the exact criticisms everyone has been giving Nick for months.
There's nothing funnier than dunking on the guy who thinks that he is above it. And that's Matt's issue. He doesn't see himself as a mere mortal among the people, or at least he doesn't want to. Matt is above the hate, above the insults, the roasts, everything he experiences online because he doesn't care. Or does he?
Once again, self-awareness is just not Nick's strong suit. Though at the end of Nick's video, he says something that really stood out to me, which is how he intends on changing his content going forward.
Anyways, let me know if you guys want me to do more deep dives on these weird guys. I'm going to start making less videos as often so I can make my videos more thought out, more fun for me to write and shoot and put together because I've got so bored. I feel like I'm conditioned to always just making videos as fast as I can, and then I realized, oh wait, this isn't fun anymore. So we're gonna do something else.
Now, it's interesting that Nick talks about how he's going to spend more time on his videos, but refuses to acknowledge that it's because he's been criticized for making lazy and factually incorrect content. And like, that's the second time he's done this during this controversy, where previously he had said he was posting less because he was depressed.
I have this job and I think and like to think that I work hard at what I do, but this past week I was depressed. I didn't want to make videos, so guess what? I didn't, because I have the privilege to be able to do that.
When like, no, it's because you were getting a lot of criticism and that bummed you out. It just feels like a very subtle rewriting of events to save face, but whatever. We'll just have to wait and see where Nick goes from here, as he himself says.
This year sucked, but maybe 2024 is my year. Yeah, my year. That sounds nice. My year.
Either way, I don't plan on talking about Nick again. I'm really proud of what I was able to do with my original video and was beyond surprised by the response, so I don't want to undermine how hard I worked by milking this and trying to make a video every time he breathes. So I'm done talking about him unless he somehow involves himself in another gigantic controversy like this. So in other words, I give it a month. I'm kidding, Nick, I'm kidding. Hopefully. But